Welcome to a Faithful God podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Rotzel, and today on the show, my friend and Christian life coach, Mandy Miles, is joining me as she teaches us how to take those negative feelings and emotions, how to uncover the truth, and teaches us how to walk it out in a healthy way. So grab those earbuds and your favorite beverage and join me for today's show. Hey friend, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the show. I am so excited to have you here. And listen, I have got quite a show for you today. My friend Mandy Miles is joining us, and she is really going to teach us how to take those negative feelings and emotions that we experience, in our life. She's going to teach us how to take those, how to identify and recognize those thoughts, and then just teaches us the different steps to walk it out so that we're walking it out in a healthy way, right? Without these negative feelings and emotions, like consuming our life. She has got just some major truth bombs she's going to share with us today, and so many powerful moments that, honest to goodness, I am going to be thinking about this for days and days to come. There was just so many things that she shared with us that were just so incredibly powerful. So I'm not going to make you wait any longer. I'm up with my conversation with Mandy. Hi, Mandy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. It's so good to see you, my friend. So I always like our listeners to know how we know each other. And actually, and I forget, we just had this conversation last month? Mm-hmm. How many years do we know each other?
I think 20 years now.
Golly day. That is so crazy.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does. Yeah. It really, really does. So you and I worked together in the dental office for years, a long time. And then you moved, we just kind of, you moved and life. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. But if you will tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am first and foremost a wife and a mom, which I'm most proud of. And I'm a life coach for women. And so what that means is I help women be equipped and empowered to basically live an intentional life and just chase after the purpose that is they're intended to and going to bring them joy. And I love that work. I feel like as women, we have such a profound opportunity just to make an impact on our families. And so that's what I do, and I love it.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? This is not what we plan on talking about. So I'm totally going off script here, if that's okay with you. I always, for my listeners, I always tell my guests, you know what? I'll give an outline, but we just kind of go with the flow. But something came to me that I think I really feel we need to talk about real quick. So you and I talked for several years, not regularly, but off and on, about really finding your passion, about finding what it is that you were called to do. You knew that God was calling you to do something, but just trying to narrow that down. If you don't mind, go ahead and speak to that, because that's something we talk about in our community all the time is, stepping out and really finding your purpose. And so what I'd like for you to tell our listeners or share with our listeners is just kind of a quick snapshot of that journey.
Yeah. And I'll try to make it quick. It was a journey.
And it always is, it always is. So
I would say it was a journey of not just kind of self-discovery, but also like reconnection with who I was, because I think life happens and we just go through life and we kind of lose that and we forget a lot of things that make us who we are. And so like I said, I talked about being a wife and a mom, and that's always what's been on my heart as just my greatest desire. And so I know that's like a little traditional these days, and I'm so proud of it. It doesn't bother me a bit.
Good for you, girl. I love that. I've
never, I've always wanted to be successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how you define success matters. And so for me, that's always been very purpose driven. Yeah. And I always knew that I wanted, to really fulfill that,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't exactly know what that meant because I was not a traditionally career-minded
Yeah.
person. And so I feel like what happened is like I got married and I was happy in my marriage. It was a journey to have my little girl. I'm a stepmom, so I've been raising kids for many, many years, but it was a journey to have my little girl. And then I got into motherhood, and both of those things I had, like that's what I wanted. It's what I had. But it was like that little piece was missing. That was that fulfillment, right? That purpose.
Yeah.
And so I kind of I became obsessed with it, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would come up with ideas and I'd go down this path. And, like we talked so much over that time.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I got so in my head about it. And
Yeah.
I became very frustrated with feeling like I could not figure out what am I supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so it got to a point where I was so frustrated that I ended up reaching out to a counselor, and I just wanted another perspective. And what I really wanted was someone to tell me, like, what is blocking?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is my problem? What is
Yes.
standing in my way?
Yes.
I went to this amazing Christian counselor who was just phenomenal. And lo and behold, it was me. It was me standing in the way. Um, it was crazy. I mean, the alignment of everything that happened was just so wild. So, I started working through all of this with her, and she was recognizing that I had a lot of very critical thoughts about myself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just very hard on myself. And so she was challenging me to really pay attention to that and to really capture those thoughts
Yeah.
and pay attention to when they were coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took it a step further. And I went home. I think I've told you this story, Tammy, but I went and I am a writer. I journal
Mm-hmm.
everything. I have notebooks all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Started reading through my journals, and I was literally shocked at how many times I had called myself a failure. I mean, like
Wow.
over and over and over for years,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely years on years. And
Wow.
so it like jumped out of the page at me, and I felt like, oh, it's me. I'm the one that's blocking me, like total self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know what? When I looked at it from a different perspective, it was a weight off of my chest. I
Wow.
felt like I felt like I had just discovered this freedom. And I went
Wow.
and I
Yeah.
told her about it. And through that process, one of the things that we had also discovered in my counseling was that I was really struggling with vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in conjunction with kind of realizing those thoughts, I had also been doing some practices of reaching out to people, my close people,
Mm-hmm.
my family, my sisters, my husband, and asking them vulnerably, like, what am I good at? What am I to
Mm-hmm.
you? You know what I mean? And just kind of get
Mm-hmm.
that. And the
Wow.
same things kept coming up.
Yeah.
I'm the one everybody goes to for advice. I'm always the coach in the family. I'm the one that tells the truth when nobody wants to hear it, but they need to hear it, right?
Right. Right.
And so we went through that whole process, and shared all that with my counselor. And she said, have you thought about life coaching? And I mean, the things that happened after that were
Mm-hmm.
just like, I go home and then up pops a Christian business life coach. And, it's just alignment after alignment after alignment.
Yeah.
And I realized that is drawing on all of my strengths and who I am. One of the questions she had asked me that stumped me in
Mm-hmm.
counseling was, who are you without the comparison to all the women you're trying not to be?
Oh.
Because unfortunately, I have a long history of a lot of women close to me that have given me an example of what I do not wish to
Sure.
replicate.
Sure.
And I realized that when she asked me that, I had no idea how to answer that. And so it really was a journey, honestly, of figuring that out, going back to who I was, and just paying attention, really.
Yeah.
Like, paying attention to who God made me to be, where my strengths were, and letting go of the expectations I had put on myself.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
That is so good. And there were so many things that you said that just really hit home for me. One of them, which we'll get into in just a little bit, but one of them, it's amazing to me, the feelings that you were having, what you were seeing, that you were writing in your prayer journals. And now how, again, what Satan means for evil, God will use for good. And look at, because I know what we're about to go into and the conversation that we're about to have, and look how that there, as difficult as it was, as painful as it was, as vulnerable as it was, look at now how God is going to use that in your story to change these women's lives. And I just think that's absolutely incredible. But, what advice would you tell someone right now who's feeling that same way, who feels like they know there's something more, they know there's something more, that, like you said, serving in your home with your daughter and with your children, and your husband. And there are seasons in our life where that is our mission field. But it's so interesting. And I hear this all the time where women are just feeling there's like something there. There's just, you're missing something. And it's just, that you're meant for something more. Speak to that person who is feeling that way. And what advice would you give them to really encourage them to step into it?
Right. I have a couple of thoughts on that. One, I think that in society now, everything is self.
Yes.
It's self-focused. It's in a way of, try not to get on my soapbox here.
No, please go.
In a way of like, you deserve happiness, and it's like this right that we have.
Yes. This rite of passage. Yeah.
But that's not our intention. Like, our fulfillment of our own happiness is not our intention.
Yes.
And so my mindset, for me, I feel like we do have to focus on self, but I view it as more of a responsibility than a journey to, happiness as the end. Yes. And with that, I think what happens is when we take responsibility for ourselves, when we become accountable and we become intentional, we start walking in a purpose, and the byproduct of that is happiness. Right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a shift in your focus. And so I think part of it is, I think you do have to, when you're in that place, you've got the self-doubt and the guilt and the shame. It's a couple of things. One, it's hard to not focus on self because that can be overwhelming, right? But I would challenge that person to step out of that a little bit. And not become, I became so obsessed with it that it got so far in my head of, it was like a problem I was trying to fix. Yeah. And I wasn't fixing it. Yes. Right? Because I couldn't see it that way. In fact, when I went through that process and I read those journals and I went through that and I took a minute to just think about that and process that, God really told me, you weren't ready. Yeah. He told me, like, I've been feeling stuck because I've been in that headspace. I wasn't ready to be where I am now. I had not discovered that. So I think you have to step out of yourself a little bit. But also, I think it's really important to evaluate what are the standards and the values that you're holding yourself to. Because when you feel this guilt and shame, which is something a lot of women find themselves in, and that self-doubt, oftentimes what's happening is we're trying to meet a standard that is unattainable. Yeah. And that's what I was doing, is I was trying to be, my husband even told me, he's like, you're trying to be 150% at this and this and this. And it's not you can't accomplish what it is that you think you're supposed to accomplish.
Yeah.
So what I suggest is think about the things that are important. So when you think about like, what kind of a wife do I want to be? What kind of mom do I want to be? What do I want to do in the world? And actually define those values. Like what makes a good wife? Because it's not perfection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we have to actually take a minute to literally define what it is that we value, because we're holding ourselves to metrics that are not attainable. Like, how do we measure?
Yeah.
And if you don't figure out what that is, you're never going to meet it.
Yeah.
And that's where guilt and shame and all of that becomes overwhelming, is when you don't actually define what it is that you're trying to meet. So I think you have to be really realistic about that.
Yeah. Meaning that is so good. Like everything you said is so good. You actually spoke, we're our guest speaker last month, at the time of recording this last month in the Grow Your Faith community. And as I was telling you before we started recording, I mean, the girls and myself included, like it was just so good. Everything that you helped us process, and that was so incredibly good. And so a lot of the girls are even going back and re-listening to it because we have to re-listen to those things. But it's interesting you talk about expectations, because back in December, my guest speaker in the Grow Your Faith community was talking, we were talking about creating self-care habits around the holidays, how to maintain and make self-care a priority during the holidays. And one of the things she talked about, which I didn't expect, was expectations. And it pierced every single one of us in that meeting that day, because every single one of us are really, really putting these godly expectations on ourselves and the people around us. And then when we fail, because none of us can meet those godly expectations, when we fail, man, it just sends us into a spiral. So I love that you addressed all of that. And I love that just your vulnerability. Like, I have to hand it to you, because I know when we're dealing with a hard subject, when we're in pain, when we feel broken, when we feel unfulfilled, when we feel less than, sometimes we want to close up. I think of it like a treasure chest inside of us, and we want to close it up. And I can't tell you how many times I've wrapped that big chain around that treasure chest and padlocked it, because I don't want to deal with those feelings. I'm just going to keep on going. I don't know if you are an Enneagram person. I'm an Enneagram 7. I like fun. I don't like dealing with the pain.
I'm a 2.
And so what's that? You're a 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can't remember. What is it?
Like the helper.
The helper. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So my hat's off to you for saying, okay, I see now, and it sometimes requires somebody else. A lot of times it requires somebody else seeing that and being able to say, go to your husband, go to your close friends and say, what do you see in me? And that is huge. And I imagine that couldn't have been easy. And I have no doubt it was humbling.
That was a real challenge for me, because in that counseling, and in fact, it's funny because a lot of the things I was doing, she hadn't even told me to do. Like, we were moving that direction and stuff, but I came back and told her that, and she's like, oh my gosh, wow, that was big.
Yeah, for real.
But it was hard because I did realize that I'm a pretty open person.
Yeah.
And so I never realized that was an issue for me, that vulnerability. I think when you reach a point where there's a difference between being open and, I'm very honest and and being really vulnerable. And so that is a journey that's like a continuous thing. And that little practice alone was like a big step for me to put myself out there and do that.
I imagine it was. I imagine, and something else that I really want our listeners to hear is you were seeing a Christian counselor, and I am a huge proponent, like honest to goodness, I think everyone needs to see a good Christian counselor. I really do. And I love that you were seeing this counselor, not because of some sort of trauma or brokenness, or maybe you were, and this was just kind of the byproduct. I don't know, but a good Christian counselor is going to help you weed some of that out. A good Christian life coach like yourself is going to help weed and pull some of that out, which is, I just think is so incredibly important. So that leads us into what we were really going to talk about. I appreciate you letting me kind of go off here, but I just felt that as soon as you said that, I just kind of felt that nudge like, oh, we need to talk about this. So, but yeah, let's talk about, so you were in the Grow Your Faith community, like I said, last month in our Lunch and Learn, you are a guest speaker, and you talked about some practical ways that when we have some of these feelings, right? Feelings are not facts, but holy moly, they really, really feel like they are when we are in the pit of it. So you were sharing with us some practical ways of how to basically take those, I kind of want to say lasso those feelings, harness, and I don't know if harness is the right word, but to take those feelings and how to work through them. And I think this is something that every one of us needs to know, and that no matter what situation we're in, we need to learn, we need to have these practical applications of how to walk this out. So can you share that, some of that with us?
So to your point, our feelings, our emotions hold a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
The problem is we don't tend to spend the time processing. What happens is we feel an emotion and we respond. We feel and we react. We feel and we react. And we don't do a good job often of hitting, the pause button going, why am I feeling this way?
Yes.
And the reality is there is always a thought attached to your feeling. So there's always something that is triggering it. It's like a cue that brings that feeling or that emotion in. And so what I've learned and what I work with my clients on is in order to really gain the knowledge that your emotions are trying to tell you, you've got to spend the time to process it. Sometimes that takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes a week, for a bigger situation. Sure. It doesn't matter. But the process looks like hitting the pause button. First of all, it starts with recognizing. Yeah. Right. Like emotions are great, but when they reach a point where they are in the driver's seat, that's when it's time to go, okay, what's going on here? Right. And so it's a process of recognizing that first, and that takes practice. And then going through and determining what is going on here. So for me, when I feel like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I've got a lot going on, I'm spiraling, or emotions are taking over.
Yes.
I hit the pause button. Usually I grab a journal, piece of paper and jot down. And these are the things that you want to.
I'm doing right now. I'm writing notes.
So first, I feel like the emotions are always on the surface, right? So what am I feeling, right? So that's easy to recognize. What am I feeling? What is the thought driving this feeling? And what I suggest is don't limit yourself. You write every single thing that you can think of. It is a dump. All of the emotions, all of the thoughts. Okay. So when you really stop and think about it, if I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry or whatever it is, I can relate that. I can trace that back to a thought that I'm having. It could be a self-doubt. It could be disappointment. It could be whatever the case may be. It's usually tied to a circumstance. Write all of those thoughts down. The next part, because the thing is our thoughts drive our feelings drive our actions, and that creates the results that we're having. So what actions am I taking from these feelings? Sometimes it's inaction. Sometimes I'm frozen, I'm not doing anything, or I'm laying on the couch all day because I'm sad, whatever the case may be. So it works as a cycle. So what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Essentially, everything that you can think of. Then I want you to go back and I want you to read those thoughts. And one of them is going to jump out at you that triggers the biggest emotion. Yeah. And I want you to highlight that and focus on that because that's what's trying to tell us something, right? The next thing is that true? Is the thought true?
Is the thought true? Okay. Okay.
A lot of times we get caught up and we're having an emotion and we've got a thought. And once we recognize the thought and we ask ourselves, is this true? Half the time it's not even true.
Yeah.
It's like, what evidence do I have to support this thought? It might not be true. It might be that I'm just vulnerable, or I'm just having a fear about something, or I'm just feeling insecure about something. Is it true? Because if it's not true, then we can take that and go, this isn't true. I don't need to be living in this thought. Now, on the flip side, it might be true. Sometimes it is. And that's okay too. If the thought is true, the next question is this thought serving me? Even if it's true, whatever it is, my husband's mad at me, my best friend doesn't want to speak to me, whatever the case may be. Even if it's true, is it serving me? Well, I would venture to say that if you are in a place where you are stuck in pain and emotion and your emotions are driving your actions, the thought is not serving you. And so what we have to realize is that we actually have control over that. We have so much more control than we think.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Right.
But we get to choose. So we actually get to then choose the thought that we want to have. How do I want to think about this situation? So when you highlight the main thought and you highlight the main emotion and you highlight the main action, the next step after processing all that is to choose what you want that actually to be. What do I want to think about this? How do I want to feel about this? What actions do I want to take? And then depending on the degree of the scenario, it may be that what I encourage is we take that thought and we practice it. Well, maybe it's, sometimes I just have a day, right? And I take 5 minutes and I process it and I'm like, okay, I'm good. Nope, this is not it, snap out of it. We're good to go. And then sometimes it's a bigger situation. And I'm taking that thought and I'm writing that every single day. And I'm practicing that.
Yeah.
Because change is tied to action. But it all has to work together.
Yeah.
So the process of writing that thought is an action step. So in your journal every day or what you're doing, you're going to solidify the thought that you want to have about this situation and you're going to practice it. Maybe you're writing it every morning when you wake up, maybe you're writing it every night before bed, but you are actively pursuing that thought.
I love that. And if
there's someone else involved in the situation, we have to also recognize we can't control that. No matter what they do, how they, all we can control is how we respond to the situation and how we choose to feel about the situation. And no one else gets to put emotions in your body.
That is so good, Mandy. And yet, how many times do we allow that to happen?
Right. Which is easy. It's so easy. And it's natural.
Yeah.
That's why it takes practice to both recognize it and to actively choose how you want to think about it.
Yeah. And I love that you said that it takes practice, because that's something we talk about in the community all the time is, building those spiritual reflexes. And we talk about habits, right? Creating habits. And we do that by practicing. I know and I just read again a newsletter the other day that they were talking about how um, habits take X amount of days
Right.
to form, but it's actually the repetition, the
Right.
practice of doing it. That's what changes the neural pathways in our brain for us to create new habits. And so it's something that we have to practice again and again and again. And, trusting God, trusting our feelings, all of that. It's not, or no, I'm not saying it right, but it's a choice. We have to make that choice.
Right.
Yeah. Cause our feelings are going to be so much louder than whatever it is. And so we have to make that choice to do these things. And I love that you said that change is tied to action. I've been taking notes. I apologize. I promised I was paying attention, but I was just taking notes. But it's so true. Change is tied to action. And if we want to experience a fulfilled life, if we want to experience peace in the midst of the pain, then we've got to take action. We have to make that choice to do something. We can't sit there and camp out in it, or we can. And most of us have for most of our life because we haven't been taught these skills on how to take that, how to lasso those feelings.
Yeah. And that's a choice too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So you're always making a choice.
That's true. Yeah.
But you're just
so right.
It's recognizing it, right? I mean, they're choosing to sit in this. And you know what? Some people do that. I like the misery. I want to stay here.
Yes.
I want to stay here because it feels,
comfortable.
That's a choice, right?
Yeah.
And so
I didn't think about it like that.
Recognizing that we really do have so much more control than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
Because so much of what we do is completely reactionary. We run on autopilot so much. And even when it comes to our emotional responses and our actions, and there's science there. There's a lot tied to, when you were a child and the way that you were, the wiring that was built in you. But you can rewire.
Yes.
You can shift that.
Yes.
You have to do it with intention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It requires a different action, making a different choice.
Right. Yeah.
Man, this is so powerful. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, you're saying all this, and I'm thinking of a situation I'm in right now where I'm really, really struggling. And everything you are saying, Mandy, is, I've been making the choice, and it's been the wrong choice all these years.
But also, I do want to say this too. Sometimes what's not healthy is to hurry and push away a negative emotion if you're not ready to. So we don't want to stay in that, and we don't want to live there.
Right.
But also, sometimes like sadness has to happen. Sometimes disappointment has to happen.
Right.
And so it may be that, you make a decision of like, today I'm going to be sad about this.
Yeah.
Today I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
And allow yourself to have the emotion because they're not wrong.
Right.
Not that the emotions are wrong. They're telling you something. They're serving a purpose. But then you just have to decide, you choose to feel it, process how you want. And sometimes that takes a little time. Yeah. But then you just have to decide, okay, I've done that. I've allowed that feeling to be here. But I'm in control now. So my feeling can be here, but it's not going to be in the driver's seat. So you can allow it without letting it be in control.
Mandy, this is so good. Such great stuff. Oh my, I'm just so sitting
powerful.
Here just
it really is.
Yeah. What's that?
It's powerful. It really is.
It is, because when you change when you change that mindset on how, even choosing to sit in the pain of it and be sad that day, it's still a mindset shift because you are, like you said, you're then in control. You're no longer allowing your emotions to feel, to be in control.
Yes. Yeah.
Man, that is so, so good. I don't know when it was, a couple months ago, I took off. I grabbed my prayer journal and my Bible and I just took off. I was having a really rough day and I just took off and I went to a park and I was just going to sit there and I was going to go through and just write. And this is so funny. Like I was so sad and just so broken that day. And at one point though, I just couldn't help but look up at God and start laughing because for one, I chose to, okay, I'm just going to I'm going to let all these feelings out. I'm just going to let them out. I'm going to feel them. I'm going to sit with them. I'm going to talk to God about them. And I plan to take my journal and write all these things in there. Mm-hmm. And don't you know, I actually grabbed an old journal by accident. And when I opened up the page, it was all these things that I had written before about this same exact topic.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And it was all these answers and just reflections from before. And I'm just like, I really was going to,
you have to laugh. Yeah.
Like, God, and I just sat there just reading them over and over and over again. And God knew what I needed right then. Yeah. I mean, he knew what I needed in that moment better than I did because I planned to just really do a lot of blasting in my prayer journal, quite frankly. Yeah. I was so frustrated, but yeah, I understand what you mean though, like to take and that day, as upset as I was, I see, like, I didn't see it until just now when you said it, but I actually did take control that day, even though I still sat in it.
Right.
Yeah. My mind is just like going,
I love it.
All these different things that I'm thinking and stuff. So yeah. Oh my goodness. Good stuff, Mandy. Yeah. Good stuff.
The journaling is like I know you do that too, but it's so helpful.
Absolutely.
And sometimes too, not just, your prayer journal, which it's wild. I mean, my prayer journal changed drastically once
it did.
Once I realized what was going on here.
Yeah.
Sorry about the last 10 years, guys. I'm back, but also sometimes and I have, in different things that I do with my program, I have like a list of prompts as well.
Yeah.
Where it's not just the prayer journal, not just like today and writing through what's going on, but also kind of thinking back on things too. Like, different things that get you out of the everyday can really help you uncover, some things as well, especially when it relates to purpose, like you were talking about. I think there's a lot of exploring to do there when you think back on different things where you're not so focused in on solving a problem, but just kind of like reflecting,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I think is so important. We need to remember is that we do have to reflect. I'm plugging in my computer here. You can see my computer's about to die, but it is important that we reflect and that we go back. And that's why, I talk about the importance of a prayer journal. And in fact, I just wrote a blog post about it a couple weeks ago, I think it was, but that it's not yes, it's for prayers, but it's also, write down Bible verses, write down what it is you're learning, that you feel God is revealing to you in that Bible verse that day, but it's also getting your thoughts on paper, getting them out of your head and on paper, and also reflection, because reflection is if we allow ourselves to reflect, that's when we're going to really start to grow spiritually. Absolutely. That's when we're going to grow closer to God. That's when we're going to, things are going to start moving when we allow ourselves. It sounds counterintuitive to go back, to go forward, but that's the only way sometimes, because we're so stuck and our circumstances that we've got to reflect. We've got to ask those hard questions, and so that we can move forward for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Good stuff, Mandy. Oh my goodness. My wheels are just spinning, for days now. I'm going to be just like,
Jamie's going to be in the journal today.
I am. I'm going to have to go back. Of course I did it this morning, but I just may have to go back today. That's for sure. But yeah. So Mandy, what other, just kind of one last piece of advice would you give someone who just really needs just some encouragement and whatever it is they're going through, whether it's a broken relationship, whether it's an addiction, a chronic illness, I'm just, financial hardship, whether it's trying to find their purpose. What advice would you give someone today? You've given us so much. So, but
I think, first and foremost, it is going to God, giving up, really recognizing the control that you have and the control that you don't.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have so much more than we realize, but it's not all, right? Yeah. So I think it's a balance of allowing God to have control, but also taking accountability for what we can do.
Yes.
And most of that comes through processing, through choosing how we want to think and respond to a situation, and really just taking ownership of that. We can't take ownership of anyone else's choices or responses or emotions. Yeah. All we can do is focus on ourselves in terms of that responsibility. And so much can change by doing that. Things that you cannot imagine shifting can shift when you actively and intentionally pursue how you want to think and respond in a situation. Yeah. And then of course, just inviting the Holy Spirit in to be a part of that and guiding that, because there's always an element of giving, you have that control and that responsibility, but there's always the element of giving it over as well. Yeah. So when you're actively seeking, for that guidance, that's going to help you with that processing as well. Yeah. I love that. Thank you, Mandy. Well, tell us, where can we find you? My listeners need to know where they can go and follow you and find you and all of the things. My website is mandymilescoaching.com, and it's the same on Instagram at Mandy Miles Coaching. Got it. And I will be sure to put all those links in the show notes, or both of those links in the show notes as well. But Mandy, thank you so much, my friend. You have just given so much to my community these last couple of months with being the guest speaker at our Lunch and Learn last month, and then doing this today. And we just truly, truly appreciate you. And I'll be honest with you, as all this is going, I've got some other things that I'm thinking about too. So well, I love it. I'm happy to share and help. And your community was amazing. I had such a great time. Thank you. So thanks so much for having me here. Thank you, Mandy. So much. And absolutely. Wow. Did I tell you, my friend, or what? Mandy is so good. And I have no doubt this blessed you today. I have no doubt it did, because every one of us goes through these, these times when we have these feelings, these negative feelings and emotions, and we're trying to, we put ourselves down because we put these expectations on ourselves. And it's really, really hard to walk that out. And here's the thing, my friend, we cannot completely serve God. That's not how I'm trying to say it. We cannot fully serve God until we can let go of some of these negative emotions and feelings that we are feeling about ourselves, right? We have got to be able to learn how to process these things, how to do that. And here's the thing, most of us have never been taught these things. We've got to learn how to process this and walk this out. As we talked about in the episode today,
if you are struggling with some of these things and you need more help, number one, reach out to Mandy. I'll put the link in the show notes. Mandy is incredible, as you heard, and she would love to come alongside you as your Christian life coach. The other thing is a good Christian counselor. I am all for Christian counseling. I think it is so important for every single one of us. But I want to tell you, or you, as you saw in the notes, if you were watching on YouTube, I just want to give you or kind of repeat some of these really good points that Mandy had in there. So number one, thoughts drive our feelings. Feelings drive our actions. And so we want to remember that. We want to remember that the thoughts, we've got to go back, like Mandy said, we've got to go back and see what are those thoughts, right? So the next time you're feeling and you have these feelings and these emotions that are overcoming you, I want you to take the steps that Mandy said. Number one, she said, grab a piece of paper and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Number two, she said, what is the thought driving this feeling? Write these things down, my friend. I am all about a good prayer journal. And by the way, if you need some prayer journals to help you strengthen your prayer life, hop on over to footprintsofinspiration.com/best prayer journal to get those, get my list of 15 good prayer journals for that. But write these things in your prayer journal. Number two, so I did 1 and 2. Number 3 is the thought true? Is it true? Sometimes, or most of the times, as Mandy said, it's not. But in those times that it is, what she said is then we ask ourselves, is it serving us? Which most of the time it's not, right? Most of the time, even though it's true, it's not serving us any longer. We get to choose how we allow that to affect us, how we allow that to for us to take action, right? Or our reactions to it. It's something I said all the time when my kids were growing up. We cannot control what happens to us, but we can control our reaction to the situation. And so that is this process that Mandy took us through is going to help you do that. So I encourage you, if you don't have a prayer journal yet, go get one. I think everybody needs a prayer journal, and if nothing more than to help you process these types of feelings. So friends, our change is tied to action, like Mandy said. And if we want to experience change, if we want to experience transformation in our life, if we want to stop being controlled by our emotions and our circumstances, we've got to learn how to walk this out in a healthy way. And here's the thing, my friend, here's what I want you to know. Again, we talked about this in the episode. We've got to watch the expectations we put on ourselves, right? We can't expect to walk this out perfectly. God never expected that for us. What we have to do is just keep practicing, right? We have to keep building those spiritual reflexes of going back and asking ourselves these questions, right? Asking ourselves these questions when we recognize and identify the way we are feeling, the way we are acting, the way we are reacting. So friend, I hope, and I actually have no doubt this blessed you today. Mandy is so good at what she does, and she has such a passion for helping others experience and really experience the life that God has for them. Be sure to hop on over and check out mandymilescoaching.com. Also follow her on Instagram. I put the links in the show notes for you. And my friend, if you will do me a favor, first and foremost, wherever you are listening, be sure to subscribe to the show. And if this episode, blessed you today, will you do me a favor and share it with a friend? We really need to get this message out there, and we really need for people to, just every one of us, we all need help in our life, and we all need just some great basic skills to process all the things that are thrown at us. So if you wouldn't mind sharing this with a friend, we would truly, truly appreciate it. So friend, thank you so much for joining me today, for joining Mandy and I. And listen, I will meet you back here next week for another episode of a Faithful God podcast.